Don't come any closer. Amara screamed, her hands trembling, eyes wide as they locked onto the crimson smear on Julian Harrington's white shirt. The storm outside wailed like it too had seen what she saw. The billionaire froze at the bottom of the grand staircase, marble under his bare feet, his shirt half unbuttoned, his face pale under the chandelier's fractured light. The blood wasn't dry yet. For one haunting second, neither of them breathed. Then Julian slowly raised his hands, not in guilt, but as if calming a wounded animal. Amara, you didn't see what you think you saw. But the streak glistened, and the metallic tang in the air told her otherwise. Hours earlier, the Harrington mansion had been still as a museum. The wind pressed against the glass. The clock ticked in echoes, and Amara Johnson moved through each room with careful precision. She had been in the mansion for only 2 weeks, but already she understood its rhythm. The silence, the ghost of perfume lingering in unused rooms, the locked west wing where Evelyn Harrington's portrait hung above the fireplace like a curse. Amara's world had been small before this job, a cramped apartment on the south side of Newbridge, a mother with failing eyesight, and nights spent counting coins to pay rent. She'd taken the maid job despite the rumors about Mr. Harrington, his temper, his coldness, the tragedy that hollowed him. None of that mattered. She needed the paycheck, but what she hadn't expected was how heavy silence could feel in a house like this, as if every wall had witnessed something it couldn't forget. Julian Harrington was not what she'd imagined. When she'd first seen him, he wasn't shouting orders or gloating over deals. He was standing alone in the study, fingers pressed to his temples, staring at nothing. He was tall, lean, with the kind of sculpted face tabloids adored. High cheekbones, icy blue eyes, hair the color of dark ash. But up close, Amara noticed something no camera would. The faint tremor in his hand when he poured his coffee. The way he avoided looking at Evelyn's portrait when he walked by it. Clara Davenport, the head housekeeper, had warned her. "Speak only when spoken to," Clara said sharply on Amara's first day. "Mr. Harrington doesn't like chatter. And don't go poking your nose where it doesn't belong. People who do don't last here." Amara had nodded silently, swallowing the bitterness of the word people. That night, the storm rolled in thick and fast. The power flickered twice before going out. Clara was asleep upstairs, and Amara moved through the dim hallway with a candle, checking the doors and windows like she'd been told. The flicker of the flame cast strange shapes on the walls. Faces, she thought, though she knew it was only her nerves. When she reached the base of the staircase, she heard it. The low sound of someone's voice, not talking, but pleading. She froze. Then Julian appeared at the top of the stairs, moving slowly, his white shirt gleaming faintly in the candlelight. His steps were unsteady, his face was drained of color, and that's when she saw it. The streak of blood smeared across his chest and sleeve, like he'd pressed against a bleeding wound. Her scream echoed through the hall. Julian's eyes darted toward her, startled, not angry, but pained. "It's not what you think," he said quietly, each word trembling. But Amara stumbled back, clutching the candle as it flickered. "You're bleeding!" she gasped. What have you done?" Julian pressed a hand against the stain, his voice low. "Go back to your room, Miss Johnson." He turned toward the corridor, but his legs buckled. He caught the railing, his breath ragged. She rushed forward despite herself. You're hurt. Let me call someone." "Don't!" he hissed, and his tone turned sharp, desperate. "Don't call anyone." Amara froze again, her heart hammering. Something about his voice, the terror in it, stopped her. Then she saw something else. Under the faint light, the blood wasn't deep red. It was darker, thicker, and on his hand, beneath the crimson, was the faint glimmer of glass dust, tiny shards that sparkled when the lightning flashed. "What happened?" she whispered. Julian didn't answer. He moved to the window, pulling the curtain aside. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured. "You don't understand what this house does to people." His words chilled her more than the storm ever could. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the rain-streaked windows as if nothing had happened. The staff moved around the house with their usual briskness, and Clara's voice cut through the breakfast hall like a blade. "Miss Johnson, what did you do last night?" Mr. Harrington looked disturbed this morning. Amara hesitated. He was bleeding. "I tried to help him." "Bleeding?" Clara's eyes narrowed. "You must have imagined it. Mr. Harrington doesn't need help from you." Amara's mouth opened, then closed. The memory of the blood on his shirt was too vivid to be imagination, but Clara's warning glance silenced her. When Julian appeared later that morning, dressed flawlessly, there was no sign of any wound, no bandage, no red stain, only his cool, distant demeanor, the same as before. He walked past her without a glance, but as he passed, something strange happened. He dropped his cufflink, a small silver piece shaped like a tear. Amara bent down to pick it up, but when she looked up again, he was already gone. That night, she placed the cufflink on the edge of his desk, neatly, quietly, and turned to leave. But something made her pause. On the corner of the desk lay a photograph half hidden under papers. Julian and his wife, Evelyn, standing on a balcony, smiling for the cameras. Only, now that she saw it up close, the smile wasn't real. Evelyn's eyes looked hollow, and in the reflection behind them, barely visible, there was something else. A shadow that didn't belong to either of them. Amara shivered. She turned to leave, but a voice stopped her. "Do you believe in ghosts, Miss Johnson?" Julian stood in the doorway, his tone calm, almost amused. But his eyes were anything but. Amara swallowed hard. "I believe some things don't rest easy," she said softly. Julian's gaze lingered on her, then on the photograph. "Neither do I," he murmured. "Neither do I." Lightning flashed again outside, and, for a brief, terrifying instant, she could have sworn the portrait of Evelyn in the hallway smiled. The mansion awoke to whispers. By dawn, rumors had already spread among the staff, the kind that travel faster than truth. "The new maid screamed last night," the cook whispered to the gardener. "Said she saw blood on Mr. Harrington." "Blood?" The gardener chuckled. "What, you think he killed a rat? Or maybe she's scared of red wine." Laughter. "But not from everyone." Clara Davenport heard it all, her sharp gray eyes glinting like knives. "Enough," she snapped. "You'll not spread nonsense in this house. Mr. Harrington's business is his own." Still, the gossip persisted, like a scent that couldn't be scrubbed away. Amara tried to keep her head down, polishing the mahogany banister where Julian's hand had gripped it last night. She could still see it, dark stains in her memory even if the marble now shone spotless. But the unease hadn't left her. That moment when Julian's voice broke, when he said, "You don't understand what this house does to people," it echoed in her mind. Julian didn't come down for breakfast that morning. Clara claimed he was in meetings, though Amara suspected that was only half true. By noon, the storm had passed, leaving the estate washed in silver light. Amara was assigned to the west wing, the forbidden one, to dust the sitting room where no one ever went. The door creaked as she opened it, and dust floated in shafts of light like glittering ghosts. Evelyn Harrington's portrait hung above the fireplace, framed in gilt, eyes the color of honey and sadness. She was beautiful. Too beautiful, Amara thought. But there was something trapped in her painted smile, something desperate. On the piano below, it sat a broken metronome. Amara reached to wipe it when she noticed faint fingerprints on the lid. Recent ones. Someone had been here. "Miss Johnson!" Clara's sharp voice sliced through the room. Amara jumped, nearly dropping her duster. "Mrs. Davenport, I told you not to enter this wing." Clara's gaze darted around the room. "No one is permitted here. Mr. Harrington made that clear." Amara hesitated. "I was told to clean it." Clara stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Listen to me carefully. This house remembers. It keeps things you'd rather forget. If you're smart, you'll do your work and keep your eyes off the walls." The warning hung between them like a threat, but Amara noticed something then. A flicker of genuine fear in Clara's face. Not malice. The woman's hands trembled slightly. "I understand," Amara whispered. "Good." Clara straightened her uniform. "Now go help with the dining hall. We have guests tonight. Important ones." By evening, the Harrington mansion came alive again. Chandeliers glowing, wine poured, laughter echoing. Julian entertained 3 business associates, all sharp suits and sharper egos. Amara served quietly, eyes lowered, the scent of roasted duck thick in the air. "New maid?" one of the men asked, glancing at her. Julian's jaw tightened. "Yes, Amara Johnson. She's exotic." Another chuckled, as if it were a compliment. "You always did have good taste, Julian." Amara kept her face neutral, though her chest tightened. Julian said nothing, didn't defend, didn't correct. Just took a sip of his wine and stared at his plate, as if it were safer than their eyes. When she returned with dessert, she noticed something strange on Julian's sleeve, barely visible under the cuff. A faint red mark, like an old stain that had resisted washing. Her throat tightened. It wasn't her imagination. Later, when the guests were gone and the halls fell silent again, Amara stayed to clear the dishes. The clock struck midnight. Julian sat alone at the table, tie loosened, eyes distant. "You can go," he said without looking up. She hesitated. "Sir, about last night." His gaze lifted, slow, weary, dangerous. "You were told to forget that." "I tried," she said quietly. "But I saw the blood." His fingers clenched around his glass. "It wasn't mine." Her breath caught. "Then whose?" For a moment, the silence between them pulsed like a heartbeat. Then he spoke, voice low, cold. "You're overstepping." Amara flinched but didn't back down. "I just thought you might need help." He laughed softly, not in amusement, but disbelief. "Help," he echoed, setting the glass down. "Do you think money fixes everything, Miss Johnson?" "No," she replied, steady. "I think people do." That silenced him. For the first time, his eyes softened. Not much, but enough that she saw the loneliness underneath. Then he stood. "Go to bed," he said. "Quieter now." "Please." The next morning, disaster struck. Clara barged into Amara's quarters before sunrise, holding a small velvet box. Inside it glittered a silver cufflink. the tear-shaped one Julian had dropped 2 nights ago. "Explain this." Clara barked. Amara stared. "That's Mr. Harrington's. I found it on the floor." "So you stole it?" "I left it on his desk." "Then why?" Clara hissed, stepping closer. "Was it in your drawer?" Amara froze. Her drawer? She hadn't opened it since yesterday. "I didn't put it there," she whispered. Clara's expression twisted with satisfaction. "Mr. Harrington will hear of this." By breakfast, the accusation had spread like wildfire. The other staff avoided her. The gardener wouldn't meet her eye. Julian arrived late, crisp as ever, scanning the room when Clara whispered in his ear. His gaze turned toward Amara. Cool. Unreadable. "Miss Johnson," he said evenly. "May I see you in my study?" She followed, heart pounding. The heavy oak door shut behind them. He stood by the window, sunlight cutting across his face. "Clara tells me a valuable item was found in your possession." "I didn't take it," Amara said firmly. "I tried to return it. Someone put it in my drawer." He turned then, eyes piercing. "And who would do that?" "I don't know. But I've worked here 2 weeks. I've done nothing wrong." Julian studied her for a long moment. "Do you know what people have done to stay in this house? What they've said to keep my trust?" "I don't want your trust," she said softly. "Just fairness." That caught him off guard. His gaze wavered, then dropped. "Fairness," he repeated, as if testing the word. "You think that exists in this house?" She held his stare. "It could." For a second, one fragile, dangerous second, Julian Harrington almost smiled. But then the mask returned. "You're dismissed for the day," he said. "Go." As she turned to leave, she saw his reflection in the glass, the same faint smear of red on his cuff. And this time, she was certain it wasn't from the past. That night, when the mansion slept, Amara sat on her narrow bed, the wind whispering through the curtains. Someone had framed her. Someone wanted her gone. But more than that, something was bleeding inside this house, and she was starting to think it wasn't just guilt. From somewhere deep in the walls, faint and hollow, came the sound of a piano note. Just one. Then silence. She whispered into the dark, "Evelyn, what happened to you?" And the candle flickered out. The piano played again. This time, Amara was sure she wasn't imagining it. A single note, mournful and low, drifted through the hall like a sigh. Then another. Then silence again. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. The west wing was supposed to be locked. No one entered there after dark. But the sound came from that direction. Faint, distant, beckoning. Amara wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped into the corridor. The house was asleep, except for the storm of shadows that never truly rested. She moved carefully, her bare feet silent against the cold floor. At the far end of the hall, the portrait of Evelyn Harrington watched her, eyes glimmering in the dim light as if they followed her every step. The piano sounded again. This time she recognized the tune. Claire de Lune. Evelyn's favorite, according to the gossip she'd overheard from the cook. Her hand hovered near the doorknob of the west wing. She hesitated, then turned it. The door creaked open. Inside, dust cloaked the furniture, and moonlight spilled through the tall windows. The air smelled faintly of lilies, old perfume lingering. At the piano, the lid was half open. The keys were still vibrating, but no one was there. Amara's breath caught. She stepped closer. On the piano bench, she noticed a handkerchief. White linen, embroidered with the letter E, and beside it, a droplet of something dark. She leaned closer. Blood. It was fresh. Her heart seized. She looked toward the hallway, expecting Julian, or worse, Clara. But there was no one. Then she heard it. A soft exhale. Behind her, she spun around. Nothing. Just the whisper of curtains swaying in the cold air. And then, faintly, from somewhere behind the wall, came a muffled voice. A man's voice. I tried to stop her. Amara froze, pulse thundering. The sound came from behind the bookshelf. She pressed her hand against it, running her fingers along the edges until one panel shifted slightly. A hidden door. Her breath trembled as she pushed it open. Inside was a narrow corridor lined with dust and cobwebs. It smelled of earth and old stone. At the far end, light flickered. Candlelight. She moved closer, each step heavier with fear and curiosity. And there, in a small, hidden room, she saw him, Julian Harrington, seated in front of a large mirror, his shirt undone, a half-empty bottle beside him. His reflection looked more alive than he did. He didn't notice her at first. He was whispering, not to himself, but to the empty chair across from him. I told them it was an accident, he murmured, voice rough. But they didn't believe me. You didn't either, did you, Eve? Amara's throat tightened. He looked up suddenly, catching her reflection in the mirror. For a heartbeat, confusion crossed his face. Then, resignation. So, he said softly, you found my secret. Amara's voice wavered. I heard the piano. He stood slowly, brushing dust from his sleeve. She used to play when she couldn't sleep. Said it made the walls less lonely. I suppose they remember her better than I do. Her gaze dropped to the table beside him. On it lay a blood-stained shirt, the same one she'd seen that night. Whose blood is that? She whispered. Julian's jaw clenched. Mine! He turned away, eyes distant. I cut myself on the glass after she was gone. I thought bleeding might make me feel something again. Amara stared, unsure if he spoke truth or delusion. You could have told someone. He laughed bitterly. The world doesn't pity men like me. They see the money and assume there's no pain underneath. He poured another drink, his hand shaking. Evelyn left a note. Said she couldn't breathe in a house where love was cold. I didn't notice she was drowning until she was gone. Before Amara could reply, footsteps echoed behind her. The secret door swung wider, and Clara Davenport stood there, eyes blazing. What are you doing here? Clara demanded. Amara stammered. I heard something. You're trespassing, Clara hissed. And you, she turned on Julian, you promised to keep that room sealed. Julian's expression hardened. It's my house, Clara. It's your prison. She shot back, trembling. You shouldn't feed ghosts, Julian. They never leave hungry. Amara's breath caught. You knew about this? Clara glared at her. I know everything that happens here, and I know when someone is lying to my employer. She's not lying, Julian said quietly. That stopped Clara cold. What? I told her the truth, he said. Or enough of it. Clara's eyes narrowed. Truth? She spat. You think confessing to the maid will change what you did? Amara's stomach twisted. What did he do? Julian's voice was a whisper. I broke her. The silence that followed was unbearable. He looked at his reflection again. I didn't kill Evelyn, but I might as well have. I made her feel invisible, like everything and everyone existed beneath the weight of my name. She was sick, depressed, and I called it drama. When she begged me to see her, I walked away. When she called for help, his voice cracked. I was too late. Amara felt tears sting her eyes. There was no defense to such truth, but Clara wasn't done. And now this one, this girl, thinks she can save you? Amara lifted her chin. I'm not here to save him. I just want the truth, Clara sneered. Truth won't feed you, girl. It won't protect you either. Amara stepped closer, her voice steady. Maybe not, but it's what Evelyn deserves. Julian's eyes met hers, haunted, but alive for the first time in years. Clara's face went pale. You don't know what you're stirring. Amara turned toward her. Maybe, but it's already awake. That night, after the confrontation, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the rain tap against the windows. Somewhere below, the piano played again. Not a ghost this time, but Julian. The melody was broken, hesitant, yet full of sorrow. Amara crept to the landing and watched unseen as he played. Fingers trembling, eyes closed, face wet with tears. It was the sound of a man learning how to grieve. And as the last note lingered, she understood something terrifying and beautiful. Beneath all his cruelty, Julian Harrington was a man haunted not by his wife's ghost, but by himself, she whispered into the dark. Then face it. Because she knew, one way or another, the truth would come crawling into the light. The truth came to light not with thunder, but with applause. That night, the Harrington estate hosted its first charity gala in 3 years. The house glowed gold, its chandeliers blazing, its gardens alive with laughter and money. Politicians, socialites, and photographers swirled around Julian Harrington like moths to flame. No one saw the ghost that followed him. Amara did. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, wearing the plain black uniform Clara had insisted she press twice. Her eyes tracked Julian as he moved through the crowd, smiling when expected, shaking hands, pretending to be alive. But his eyes were distant, the same haunted blue she'd seen in the mirror of that hidden room. Amara had planned to stay silent tonight. She'd told herself that the truth wasn't hers to tell, that some wounds belonged to the dead. But when she overheard what Julian's guests were saying, the quiet inside her broke. "Did you hear?" one woman whispered behind a jeweled fan. The police closed Evelyn's case again. Poor man. So much pain, and yet look at him, still giving back. Tragic, another murmured. He adored her. Amara felt her hands tighten around the tray she carried. Adored her? The words felt like glass. She glanced toward the far end of the ballroom, where Clara was speaking with a man in a gray suit, a stranger who didn't quite fit with the glittering crowd. His posture was military straight, his expression too serious for small talk. When he turned slightly, Amara saw the badge clipped to his belt. Detective Rowan Hale. "Miss Johnson," Clara said sharply when she noticed Amara staring. "Mind your work. And remember what we spoke about?" "Yes, ma'am," Amara murmured, but her gaze lingered on the detective. She had heard of him, the investigator who'd handled Evelyn's case years ago. He had closed it as a suicide, but rumor said he'd never quite believed it. And now he was here, watching Julian with the same quiet intensity as she was. When their eyes met across the room, Amara felt something wordless pass between them. A recognition of truth neither of them could yet speak. Julian took the stage shortly after, his voice smooth, his smile rehearsed. "Tonight," he said, "we honor the memory of my late wife, Evelyn. Her spirit of compassion lives on through this foundation and through each of you who give. Applause filled the air. Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. But Amara felt her stomach twist. Compassion? He spoke as if Evelyn's death were a trophy, as if guilt could be polished into charity. She turned away, her breath shaky, and nearly collided with Detective Hale. "Careful there," he said softly, steadying her tray. His eyes flicked to her name tag. "Amara Johnson?" "Yes, sir. I've been meaning to speak with you," he said. "You were working the night the power went out, correct?" Amara hesitated. "I was." He lowered his voice. "Did you see anything unusual?" Her throat went dry. "That depends on what you call unusual," he smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised what I call normal." Amara glanced around. Clara's sharp eyes cut through the crowd, watching her. "Not here," she whispered. "Please," Hale nodded once. "Later, then." He slipped a card into her apron pocket and disappeared back into the crowd. The night dragged on in glitter and champagne. Amara kept moving, but her mind wasn't on the guests. It was on that card, on what Hale might already know. As she refilled a glass near the stage, she caught Julian staring at her. Just for a moment. There was no anger in his gaze, only warning. Fear. It told her everything. He knew the past wasn't finished with him. An hour later, as guests began to drift toward the terrace, Hale approached Julian near the bar. Their conversation was quiet, but the tension around them was electric. Amara edged closer, pretending to wipe a table. "Still open questions," Hale was saying. The coroner's report had inconsistencies. The timing of her death, for one. Julian's jaw tightened. "You're trespassing on old wounds, Detective." "Maybe," Hale said calmly. "But the dead don't rest easy when the living keep lying." Julian's glass trembled slightly. Then, from the stage, Clara's voice rang out. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. Before the evening ends, Mr. Harrington would like to share something special in honor of Evelyn." Applause. Lights dimmed. Julian turned toward the piano, Evelyn's piano. Amara's breath hitched. She hadn't seen him near it since that night. He sat, adjusted his cuffs, and began to play. The melody was fragile, haunting. Claire de Lune. The same tune that had drawn Amara into the West Wing. For a moment, the room was utterly silent. The audience was entranced, oblivious to the storm building beneath the surface. Until the final note, when Detective Hale's voice broke through the quiet. "Mr. Harrington," he said clearly, "you played this piece the night your wife died, didn't you?" Gasps rippled through the room. Julian froze. Hale stepped forward, a folded paper in hand. "The night she died, the servants heard a piano. They thought it was a recording. But the fingerprints on the keys—" He lifted the paper. "Oh, say otherwise." Whispers erupted. Cameras clicked. Amara's knees went weak. This was it. The moment truth clawed to the surface. Julian stood slowly, eyes hollow. "What do you want from me?" "The truth," Hale said. Julian looked around the glittering crowd, his investors, friends, enemies, all waiting for the next word like vultures. Then his gaze fell on Amara. For the first time, she saw the walls inside him crack. His voice broke as he spoke into the microphone. "Evelyn didn't kill herself because of scandal or sickness. She killed herself because I made her feel unloved. I crushed her spirit under my pride, and when I found her, she was still breathing." The room fell deathly silent. Julian swallowed hard. "I tried to stop the bleeding." "That's the blood she saw." He pointed at Amara, who stood frozen in the back. The night she screamed, it wasn't hers, it was mine. Someone dropped a glass. She begged me not to call for help, Julian continued, voice trembling. Said she didn't want to live in a world where love was a performance. He turned to the crowd, tears streaking his face. So I performed instead. I built this empire to bury the truth. A long, stunned silence followed. Then Hale stepped forward, softer now. Mr. Harrington, what do you want to do with that truth? Julian looked at Amara again, really looked at her, and whispered, Let it be heard. He sank to his knees before the microphone, sobbing openly as the cameras flashed. Amara's hand covered her mouth. The man she had feared, the man whose cruelty had built this palace of silence, was finally breaking. And as his tears hit the marble floor, it was as if the house itself exhaled. That night, the ballroom emptied in chaos. Reporters swarmed, guests fled, and the Harrington name burned on every tongue. But Amara didn't move. She stood alone near the piano, staring at the spot where Julian had knelt. The ghost of Evelyn's melody lingered faintly in the air. No longer haunting, but free, Amara closed her eyes, whispering, She heard you. And for the first time, the silence that followed didn't feel cruel. It felt like peace. The morning after the gala, the mansion felt emptied. Reporters crowded the gates. The servants whispered of resignations, and the air carried that peculiar stillness that follows a storm. The golden Harrington crest above the entrance, once a symbol of power, now hung like a lie exposed to daylight. Amara stood in the servants' hallway, folding linen with trembling hands. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Julian on his knees under the chandelier's blinding light, confessing as the world watched. She'd come to serve breakfast as usual, only to find the table bare. No fresh flowers, no coffee set, no Clara barking orders. The silence felt wrong. Then the door to the study opened. Julian stood there, disheveled, pale, a shadow of the man who once commanded entire boardrooms. His suit jacket hung loose, his tie undone. His eyes, those once frozen blue eyes, now looked bruised with exhaustion. Miss Johnson, he said softly. Come in, she hesitated. Sir, maybe you should rest. I haven't earned that yet. He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. Please. The study was stripped of its usual grandeur. The shelves half empty, the portrait of Evelyn removed from above the fireplace. On the desk lay stacks of envelopes, legal papers, donation pledges, letters of resignation. Julian sat down slowly, running a hand through his hair. I suppose you've heard the news? It's everywhere, Amara said quietly. He nodded. Of course it is. People love a spectacle, especially when the rich bleed. Amara clasped her hands in her lap. You told the truth. That's what matters. Julian gave a faint, broken smile. Truth doesn't clean blood from marble. She hesitated, then said gently, Maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just has to stop more from being spilled. He looked up at her, weary, but with something like gratitude flickering beneath the exhaustion. Do you hate me? He asked suddenly. Amara blinked. What? You should, he murmured. For the things I said. The way I treated you. I saw you as just another pair of hands, not a person with eyes and a heart. And yet you're the only one who saw me for what I was. She met his gaze. I don't hate you, Mr. Harrington. I pity you, because you thought loneliness was strength. That struck him. He closed his eyes, nodding slightly. You sound like her, he whispered. "Evelyn?" She used to say that too, that love without humility is cruelty dressed in diamonds. For a moment, they sat in silence. Two people bound by grief neither of them owned entirely. Then Amara spoke. "What happens now?" Julian looked toward the window, where reporters' flashes burst like lightning. "Now the world decides what to do with me. I've handed the company to the board, signed over my properties, and arranged for Evelyn's foundation to receive most of my assets. I thought redemption would feel cleaner. It doesn't," Amara stood. "Redemption isn't about feeling clean. It's about stopping the hurt." He looked up at her again, as if seeing the words themselves made flesh. "You should leave this place, Amara. You don't owe it another breath." Outside the study, she nearly collided with Clara Davenport. The older woman looked diminished, her hair unkempt, her posture slouched. Gone was the iron authority that once ruled the household. She held a small suitcase in one hand. "Leaving?" Amara asked softly. Clara's lips tightened. "He dismissed me." "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Clara said bitterly. "I stayed here for 30 years because I believed loyalty made me safe. Turns out, loyalty just makes you blind." Amara hesitated. "You weren't the only one who was loyal." Clara's eyes softened, only slightly. "You were different. You looked him in the eye. That's what frightened me," Amara frowned. "Why?" "Because Evelyn used to do the same." Clara's voice trembled. "She wasn't weak, you know. People said she was fragile, but she fought harder than anyone, until she couldn't anymore." Amara touched her arm gently. "You could still make peace with her memory." Clara looked away, her throat tight. "Peace isn't for people like me." She turned, her suitcase bumping along the marble floor as she left. For the first time since arriving, Amara felt something like sympathy for the woman who had made her life miserable. By afternoon, the mansion was nearly empty. Most of the staff had quit. Detectives and journalists came and went. The grand piano sat silent in the corner of the ballroom, its keys glimmering faintly under the gray light. Amara walked through the empty halls, each step echoing. She paused before Evelyn's old room, the one no one had entered since her death. The door was ajar. Inside, the scent of lavender lingered, faint but real. The sheets were untouched, a photograph of Julian and Evelyn on the nightstand. Beneath it lay a folded letter. Amara hesitated, then picked it up. The handwriting was delicate. "Evelyn's, Julian. If you ever find this, it means I am gone. Don't let guilt turn you into stone. Don't build a kingdom of silence. Build something that breathes. Love someone enough to listen." Amara folded the note gently, tears welling. Behind her, Julian's voice broke the silence. "I've read that letter 100 times. It never hurts less." He stood in the doorway, his posture weary but softer somehow. The arrogance was gone. What remained was just a man, stripped of every armor he'd ever worn. "She wanted you to live," Amara said quietly. "I don't know how." "Start small," she whispered. "Apologize to everyone you hurt, even if they'll never forgive you." Julian nodded slowly. "Would you be one of them?" Amara looked at him for a long moment. "You already know my answer." And then she walked past him, down the long corridor that no longer felt haunted, only hollow. That evening, the last of the reporters left. The Harrington estate stood still under the fading sky. Amara packed her small bag. Just enough clothes, the money she'd earned, and the courage that had carried her through this house of ghosts. Before she left, she found Julian in the garden, standing by Evelyn's statue. The flowers around it were newly planted, His hands were dirty from kneeling in the soil. "She loved lilies," he said quietly, without turning. "Said they looked like forgiveness." Amara smiled faintly. "Then she'd be proud of you." He looked up at her then, eyes red, voice trembling. "Thank you, Amara, for seeing what everyone else refused to." She shook her head gently. "Don't thank me. Just don't waste it." He nodded, silent tears streaking his face. As she walked down the path toward the gates, the mansion behind her seemed to shrink. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings, and for the first time since arriving, Amara Johnson felt the weight lift from her shoulders. She had come as a maid. She was leaving as something far more dangerous, a witness to truth. Far behind her, in the quiet of the garden, Julian whispered to the wind, "Evelyn, I'm listening now." And somewhere in that stillness, the wind carried a note of clair de lune, faint, forgiving, and free. Rain came with the dawn, soft, steady, and strangely kind. The city outside the Harrington estate stirred to life, but inside, silence still ruled. The news cycle had moved on to fresher scandals, and the once fabled mansion now stood as a cautionary monument. The servants' quarters were empty. The halls echoed. Even the chandelier's glass seemed dull, stripped of its pride. Amara Johnson had left 3 days earlier. She'd gone to stay with her cousin, a nurse in Harlem, determined to rebuild a quiet life. But quiet didn't mean peace. She kept seeing that moment. Julian's tear-streaked face, his voice breaking as he confessed under the golden light. It wasn't pity she felt now, but a strange ache, like unfinished music. Still, she refused to return. Some wounds weren't hers to tend, until the letter came. It arrived folded in cream stationery, her name written in an unsteady hand, Amara. "The foundation is holding a ceremony this Friday. Evelyn's final project is complete. I thought you should be there. It wouldn't exist without you. J. Harrington." She turned the page over. A second note, smaller, tucked inside, P.S. "There's something I never showed you. Something Evelyn left behind. Please come." Amara's fingers hesitated over the paper. Against her better judgment, she felt the old pull. Not curiosity this time, but duty. So, on Friday morning, she found herself once more at the black iron gates of the Harrington estate. The garden looked reborn. The lilies Julian had planted now bloomed in brilliant white clusters, glistening under the soft drizzle. A modest gathering had formed. Board members, press, a few close friends of Evelyn's. There were no lavish decorations, no ostentatious displays, just a small stage and a plaque covered in silk. Julian Harrington stood at the podium, no longer dressed like a titan of industry. He wore a simple gray suit. His hair, once sleek, was flecked with streaks of silver, but his voice, when he spoke, carried the calm of someone who'd finally learned to breathe. "Evelyn dreamed of this place," he said, gesturing to the garden. "A center for music therapy. A place where children could heal through sound, not silence. She believed that art could teach us what power never could." The crowd listened, quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause. Julian's gaze drifted over the guests and found Amara, standing near the back. His voice softened. "She taught me something else, too, that the greatest cruelty isn't hate, it's indifference. I was guilty of that. For years, I silenced voices that deserved to be heard." His throat tightened. "One of them is standing here today. Miss Amara Johnson, Would you join me, please? A ripple went through the crowd. Amara froze. She wanted to disappear, but Julian's eyes, earnest, steady, held her. Slowly, she stepped forward. Her shoes sank slightly into the damp grass, and for a brief moment, she felt like that frightened maid again, standing in a house that never wanted her. But this time, the air was different. Julian turned toward her as she reached the stage. "You saw me when no one else did," he said quietly. "And you told me the truth I'd buried under pride. You reminded me that remorse is not weakness. It's the beginning of change." He glanced at the silk-covered plaque. "This center exists because of Evelyn's vision, and because of Amara's courage." He pulled the cord. The silk fell away, revealing the engraved bronze plaque beneath. The Evelyn Harrington Center for Healing Arts, in memory of love that endured beyond silence. Dedicated by Julian Harrington and Amara Johnson. Applause rose, soft, genuine. Amara blinked, stunned. Her name, etched in bronze beside Evelyn's, gleamed beneath the gray light. Julian turned to her. "She left this for you." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside lay a delicate gold locket, Evelyn's. Inside it, a faded photograph of her at the piano, smiling, and a single folded slip of paper. Amara opened it slowly. Evelyn's handwriting curled across the page. "If you're reading this, it means you chose kindness over fear. Thank you for reminding him what love sounds like." Amara's breath caught. She closed the locket and held it tight. After the ceremony, the crowd thinned. Julian remained by the statue, shoulders relaxed, but eyes distant. "You really meant it," Amara said softly. He turned to her. "Every word. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I can build something worthy of it." She studied him, the way humility had reshaped his posture, the absence of that cold detachment. "You're not the man I met," she said finally. He smiled faintly. "I hope not." They walked together along the garden path, past the rows of lilies Evelyn loved. The air smelled of rain and earth and clean beginnings. "Are you staying here?" Amara asked. "No," he said quietly. "The foundation runs itself now. I'm moving to Boston, teaching music therapy to kids at one of the centers." "Evelyn would have liked that." Amara smiled. "I think she would have." He stopped near the gate and looked at her. "You could come too, you know. Not as a maid, as a partner in the work. I've read your file. You studied nursing before you came here. We could use someone like you." Amara hesitated. The offer wasn't pity. It was respect, but her eyes softened. "Maybe one day. For now, I think I need to find my own peace first." Julian nodded, understanding. "Then I'll wait." They stood in silence for a moment, the rain falling gently around them. The weight between them had shifted. No longer guilt and anger, but something fragile and redemptive. Julian extended his hand. "For what it's worth?" "Thank you for saving me." Amara shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just refused to look away." He smiled, a real, unguarded smile, and let her go. As Amara walked down the path once more, she heard faintly behind her the sound of piano keys being pressed. Claire de Lune again. Slow, uncertain, but hopeful. She turned for one last glance. Julian sat at the open-air piano in the garden, his fingers trembling over the keys. Above him, the clouds parted just enough for sunlight to catch on the lilies, each one gleaming like a quiet, holy flame. And for the first time, Amara didn't see tragedy. She saw life beginning again. The seasons changed quietly. the way forgiveness does. Not in grand gestures, but in the slow softening of days. By the time autumn brushed gold over the city, Amara Johnson had found work at a small community clinic in Brooklyn. The patients were mostly mothers and children, the weary and the working, people who understood survival as a second language. She liked the quiet rhythm of her new life. The smell of antiseptic and coffee, the chatter of nurses swapping stories in the break room, the sound of her own laughter returning after too long a silence. But sometimes, when the city's hum dulled late at night, she'd think of the Harrington estate, the hollow marble halls, the piano echoing through the dark, the man who had once stood over her with contempt and then knelt before truth. She didn't miss that house. She missed what it had taught her. That power means nothing if it cannot love. That silence is its own form of cruelty, and that even the proudest hearts can break open when faced with grace. One evening in November, after the clinic closed, Amara received a letter with a Boston postmark. Inside was a photograph. Julian Harrington, seated on a wooden bench beside a group of children, all smiling, their hands on small instruments, violins, flutes, tambourines. Behind them, a banner read, "The Evelyn Harrington Music Center. Grand Opening." On the back of the photograph, in careful handwriting, he had written, "They play like she used to. You were right. Truth can stop the hurt. Thank you, always." Julian, beneath the words, pressed flat and fragile, was a single white lily petal. Amara smiled through tears she didn't try to hide. She pinned the photo on the clinic's notice board, among birthday cards, thank you notes, and crayon drawings from children. A quiet reminder that redemption, once begun, never truly ends. That weekend, Amara took a train north. She didn't plan it. Her heart simply asked for the journey. When she arrived at the outskirts of Boston, the address on the envelope led her to a small, sunlit building painted pale blue, with music spilling faintly through open windows. Children's laughter mixed with the sound of a piano. She paused at the entrance, unseen. Inside, Julian sat beside a little boy, guiding his hands over the keys. "Not so hard," Julian said gently. "Music doesn't need force. It needs listening." The boy giggled, trying again. A soft note filled the air, and Julian smiled, the kind of smile that had been buried for years under guilt. Amara stepped back, unnoticed. She didn't need to go in. The sight was enough. She left the envelope she carried, a donation from her clinic, in the mailbox outside. On the back she'd written, "For Evelyn's children, for what love still has to teach us." As she walked toward the train station, the afternoon sun caught the last of the autumn leaves, scattering gold across the pavement. The world seemed to breathe easier now. A group of kids ran past her, laughing, their backpacks bouncing. One of them hummed Claire de Lune. Amara stopped in her tracks, smiling, the sound threading through her like memory. Somewhere, she thought, Evelyn was smiling too. Months later, the Harrington estate was sold to the city and transformed into a public art school. Reporters called it the house that learned to listen. The garden, still full of lilies, remained open to visitors. On the marble bench near Evelyn's statue, an inscription read, "Forgiveness does not erase the past. It teaches it to sing." And if you stood there at dusk, you could still hear faint music, not from ghosts, but from the echo of what was healed. Amara sometimes visited on her days off. She would bring flowers, sit under the wide oak, and listen to the piano drifting from the classrooms. Young fingers, uncertain but brave. She no longer thought of herself as the Maid. That chapter had closed the moment she'd chosen to scream, to speak, to see. Now, she was simply Amara Johnson, a woman who had carried light into a house that had forgotten it existed. And in that knowing, she finally found peace. That night, as the city lights shimmered across the Hudson, Amara opened her window and let the cool air wash through. From somewhere far off, a piano played. She closed her eyes, smiled, and whispered. Not to Julian, not even to Evelyn, but to herself. Some truths save more than just lives. They save souls. The music swelled, tender and unbroken. Outside, the world kept moving. And for the first time, it sounded exactly like forgiveness.